today's video, I'll show you how I painted and designed an environment from scratch. Stick around because there are some key techniques that will help you improve your digital painting. My name is Victor, I work as a concept artist, and I'm really excited to show you the final result. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do is determine where a camera will be and establish the horizon line. This is the point where the ground meets the sky in the distance. Understanding this helps you set up a strong foundation for the perspective. Now, before diving into a polished piece, one of the best ways to prepare is by gathering reference images and creating a few thumbnail sketches. This step gives you confidence when playing your composition and perspective. Here's what I'm thinking. I'll place my vanishing point here, and once that's set, I can begin designing my environment with everything aligned to the correct perspective. When dealing with complex elements like buildings and entrances, I use a very simple trick to save me some time. Instead of manually painting everything in perspective, I start by drawing them flat orthographically, and then I align them according to my vanishing point. This method ensures accuracy without wasting hours adjusting lines by hand. Same technique applies for these pillars flanking the entrance. I first lay them down in a flat plane, then adjust their angles according to my vanishing points. Now, I'm thinking about adding some decorative elements on top of these pillars. Maybe there are like some dishes with flames burning inside them, and all that is like creating trails of smoke rising into the sky. This could add an interesting contrast and enhance the composition's depth. Lighting plays a crucial role when defining the mood of your image. If you gathered some reference images for lighting, now is the time to use them. For this piece, I'm aiming for a dry, deserty, Egyptian-inspired environment dominated by warm tones. That means earthy colors for the buildings and ground, and kind of complemented by the same warm sunlight. One important tip is not to stress too much about the accuracy of your values right in the early stages. At this point, you're just establishing the value structure. There will be plenty of time for you to refine things and ensure the image is readable and interesting for the viewer. So to start, I lay down some flat colors for all the major elements and then begin defining the lighting. Now, regarding the light direction, say the light source is coming from the right, just behind the camera. This means that all planes facing that direction will be illuminated, while the opposite planes will fall into shadow. Additionally, objects will cast shadows onto surrounding surfaces, and it's crucial to maintain a consistency in how those shadows behave. I use a simple brush and lay down flat shadow shapes. Notice the image begins to take on a sense of volume as I do this. What was one of flat canvas now starts to feel three-dimensional, not completely, but we're getting there. For example, the temple entrance is currently solid black, as it should be for now. Later, we'll work on creating depth and detailing what's inside. Now, let's block out some smoke rising from the pillars. This is an important compositional element because it helps frame the focal point and adds movement to the image. I decided to keep the smoke white rather than dark. Dark smoke would make the upper part of the image visually too heavy. White smoke, on the other hand, maintains a balance and fits the atmosphere a bit better. I'll show you an easy way to create a convincing fire effect with just a few brush strokes later in the process, but for now, let's focus on shading the smoke. Shading smoke requires sort of a delicate touch. If the contrast is too high, the material will lose its soft, wispy quality. At the same time, completely flat smoke won't feel realistic. Try to subtly introduce variations in value, ensuring that it remains recognizable as smoke while blending naturally with the rest of the scene. Remember, earlier when I said you shouldn't worry too much about the exact values and how much you're pushing them, now is the time to refine them a little bit and try tweaking some of the shadows and brightening certain areas to ensure the lighting feels believable. One key detail is the shadow on the building in the background. It doesn't need to be hyper accurate. Instead, I stylized a little bit to create a more graphical composition that enhances the overall design. By the way, feel free to download a free brush pack from the description and experiment with some of my most used brushes. Let's focus on the ground. I want to add some visual interest here, so I'll create a tiled pattern for the floor. Just like before, I draw it in a simple 2D plane, so orthographically, and then distort it to fit the perspective. To make it feel more natural, you can add some sand accumulating between the tiles. You can maybe remove the visibility of the tile somewhere just to create a little bit of visual interest. Some tiles will be partially covered, while others might be missing entirely. Break up any overly perfect patterns. It will really help with your image in the end. You can push the realism further and try introducing some scattered sand in the foreground. The brush choice here matters. A textured brush that mimics the rough, uneven nature of sand works best. As I'm refining the ground, I also start thinking about adding decorative elements to the environment. Maybe some golden elements around the pillar tops or intricate patterns on the temple entrance. At this stage, I'm not committing to anything final, but just exploring some ideas to add a little bit of personality to the scene. Alright, so for the next minute I'll spend some time and finish detailing the ground and probably add a few details to the gate so that it has like a more special and designed look. If this were a production piece, I'd spend much more time in the concepting and pre-production phase. I would create multiple sketches exploring different entrance designs, pillar shapes and lighting scenarios. Only after selecting the best option would I move forward with the final keyframe illustration or like a more polished sketch. That's an important takeaway for you, just not to rush the planning stage. The more time you spend designing early on, the stronger your piece will be in the end. Alright, now let's refine the smoke a little more. I want it to feel defined but not too sharp. Using a darker texture brush, you can softly glaze over certain areas, testing different brush strokes until you can get the right balance. Another important aspect of lighting is to introduce bounce light under the dishes holding the fire. Since the light bounces off surrounding surfaces, it makes sense that the pillars would reflect some glow onto the dishes above. Subtle details like this go a long way in making a painting feel more immersive. Moving inside the temple, we don't want the entrance to be completely black. You can use a low opacity brush to indicate some architectural elements receding into the darkness. Now, even if they're barely visible, these hints of depth make a big difference. In the distance, you can place small silhouetted figures to give a sense of scale. I lightly detail their robes, heads, and skin tones to make them readable, but not too distracting and not really defined. At this point, it's important not to get stuck on any specific area. I constantly jump around the painting, refining different elements, so the entire composition evolves together. One way to keep an eye on this is to zoom in and zoom out of your whole image and have a look at the big picture. And another way to spot inconsistencies is to use the horizontal flip tool and just flip your image time to time. You may find perspective or compositional inconsistencies. Alright, now let's check out the character in the foreground. You can fill his silhouette with flat color and then adjust to better match the scene's lighting. Once I have the basic shape, I remove the line work and paint directly onto the figure. You can add details around key areas like his head, cape, while keeping the brush strokes loose and efficient. Let's quickly figure this character out and then move on to painting the flames on top of our dishes. This character isn't the main focus. I don't overwork him, just enough to make him blend naturally in the environment. But now for the fire effect, I switch my brush mode to linear dodge add and paint with a bright orange red, and the result is much brighter as you can see, and this instantly creates a little bit of a glowing effect. Now to refine it, I carve out the flame's shape with another brush, making sure it has a recognizable movement of fire, so to speak. You can also paint directly on the main layer. A final touch to make this more believable is adding a slight glow around the flames to enhance the realism. And really just a few more minutes to work on the smokestacks, making sure that the values are right and the texture works fine. Now, let's zoom out and check out the final result. I sharpened the image slightly and adjusted the values to make them pop. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, check out another environment painting I did. I think you'll find it quite useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Coming soon.